Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and we have a glorious one for you today. Well, I say glorious, it's actually filthy and disgusting, but for all the right reasons. Yes, it's the Soviet Tier 10 light cruiser, the Smolensk, played for us today by Commodore Pixel. In a mostly Tier 10 match, there are some Tier 9s and an extremely unfortunate Tier 8. That's Shimanto on his team. At least for a Tier 8, the enemy team have a Chapayev, which is actually useful. So, anyway, Commodore Pixel and the Smolensk. When I said this thing was disgusting, I wasn't joking. The thing about the Smolensk is, for once I actually disagree with the World of Warships wiki page entry on this thing, because while the firepower is devastating, it has, wait for it, 16 130mm guns. Very rapid firing too. It can choose between defensive AA or hydroacoustic search, so it has hydroacoustic search, a heel, and a smokescreen. So very nice selection of consumables. It also comes with torpedoes. The downside, of course, is the terrible armour. Basically, this is an oversized destroyer, but an oversized destroyer that has a citadel, because cruisers have citadels and destroyers don't. With 16mm of plating everywhere, and a 70mm belt, but a very narrow 70mm belt, this thing should eat armor-piercing shells like nobody's business. Because the standard tactic when a battleship or a heavy cruiser or a battle cruiser sees a light cruiser is you switch to armor-piercing ammunition. If you didn't have it loaded already, unload the guns and watch the citadel explode. And that certainly happens if you're shooting at other light cruisers with 16mm of plating and destroyer caliber armament, ships like the Flint, ships like the Atlanta, ships like the Austin, but not ships like the Smolensk. The Smolensk is special, and this is the reason why the Smolensk is as disgusting as it is, because it laughs at your large caliber armor piercing shells. And the reason is because it's so narrow. So slightly fatter ships like the Atlanta, like the Flint, like the Austin will take the 16-inch armor-piercing shell in the broadside, the shell will arm, explode inside the citadel, and the entire ship will be destroyed. But that doesn't happen with the Smolensk because it is so narrow. By the time large caliber armor-piercing shells have had their fuses arm, it's already over-penetrated and is out the other side. Which is kind of disgusting. And you'll often see, and you're going to see it today, Smolensk players adding insult to injury by deliberately showing broadside to battleships in order to take advantage of the fact that the battleship armor piercing, because when battleship players see cruisers, they switch to the AP. They're just conditioned to do so because they can delete cruisers with their armor piercing, but you can't delete the Smolensk. The standard tactic of turning in to give them narrow a target to shoot at will actually work against you in the Smolensk, because that will give the fuse time to arm if it hits you, and you will be citadeled. But shown broadside in this thing, absolutely the counterintuitive thing to do in any light cruiser, actually works to the Smolensk's advantage. There are certain disclaimers I have to add to that statement though. This only works if people are firing armor piercing at you, and the larger caliber the armor piercing the better. With 16mm of plating, high explosive absolutely wrecks this ship. Oh, hang on a second. I believe we have contact with one of the enemy submarines. His torpedoes have missed. There go the depth charges. He set a fire. Oh, there go even more depth charges. Who's that from? That was from the Schlieffen. Schlieffen got the kill. This is fine. Now then, Prinz Ruprecht. It sees him. Oh, and it's long. Ooh, actually, that could have done a lot of damage. That was high explosive. Not taking any chances with that. There goes the smoke screen. Don't know whether or not that's a Prinz Ruprecht who's actually capable of thinking and breathing at the same time, or he just has high explosive loaded by default, but either way, we're not taking any chances. 16-inch high explosive will ruin this ship. Of course, that works both ways. Low caliber high explosive, like this, will also ruin a Prinz Ruprecht, because it's a battle cruiser, strictly speaking, rather than a battleship, so it doesn't have battleship armour. And concentrated high explosive fire, and if there's one thing that the Smolensk specialises in, it's concentrated high explosive fire. 16 130mm guns. That thing is not going to last long. Commodore Pixel's quite safe at the moment, but there is a Schlieffen getting uncomfortably close, and that Schlieffen, the tier 10, is probably also running its hydro, which means it's extremely likely that Commodore Pixel has in fact now been spotted. And the Prinz Ruprecht, here it comes. There's the armour piercing. Oh dear. Caught light cruiser, flat broadside with 16-inch AP. There it goes, over penetrates. No citadels for you, Prinz Ruprecht. Not on this ship. Prinz Ruprecht down. There's Commodore Pixel's first kill. He's still hydroed, of course, because that Schlieffen is still within hydro range and is getting closer and closer and closer as the Shimakaze backs up. Similarly spotted, but what the hell is the Schlieffen doing? I mean, he knows there's a double torpedo threat around the side of this island. He's the one detecting them. And he continues to advance, although to be completely fair, the torpedoes are not going to be the thing that gets him. It's the direct gunfire from the breast. So, Schlieffen taken care of. Torpedoes up ahead. Could that be... oh, it's the... yeah, it's the Howland. I thought for a second it was the enemy Shimakaze, but he's over on the other side of the map. So, those have missed, or at least... they've missed Commodore Pixel. The biggest threat here, and this is one of the things that makes the Smolensk counterintuitive to play against, the biggest threat to this thing is not enemy battleships. Unless those enemy battleships are smart, or have had the time, which they often don't because long reloads, to switch to high explosive ammunition. The biggest threat is actually other cruisers, particularly light cruisers. Because light cruisers by default tend to be firing high explosive at everything. So the Worcester over there is going to be an issue. The Minotaur could also be a substantial issue, even though it doesn't get high explosive ammunition, but its 152mm AP isn't going to over-penetrate. Also the heavy cruiser there, the Rune, who is also firing high explosive, an 8-inch high explosive, can absolutely ruin your day in one of these things as well. There was a whole bunch of armour piercing there. That was almost certainly the Minotaur. He's going to want to finish the Rune off here. Not that the Rune's the biggest threat, but it's the easiest one to kill because it's sort of in open water and the Minotaur and the Worcester are not. While this is going on, can I just point out how singularly useless the teams Balau and Shimakaze have been? Look at their positions on the map. Look at... we've actually got the Shimanto flipping that central cap at Bravo because the destroyers have been so incredibly useless. I mean, fair enough, there were 3 radars on the enemy team, but no carrier. The Shimakaze is the... okay, it's not as stealthy as a submarine, but it's the stealthiest ship in this battle, and he's staying as far away from that cap circle as he possibly can, even though the threat has now mostly been eliminated. And it's not that he's even staying as far away from the radar as he can, because he's still within radar range of the Worcester. He's just in radar range of the Worcester in a position that's no good to anybody. That and the fact that he's absolutely using the 20km noob tube torpedoes tells you everything that you need to know about this Shimakaze player. As Commodore... oh wow, and he's actually gotten himself spotted by and is shooting at the Howland. He saw the Howland coming, he's the one who spotted him. I thought the Shimakaze was dead for sure here, and if the Howland had survived a couple of seconds longer, he probably would have been, because there's a Worcester and a Minotaur over there, but... well, he gets the kill on the Howland. I'm not even sure those torpedoes were aimed at him. I suspect they were probably aimed behind the island over there where the enemy light cruisers are lurking, but the Howland's dead. The Shimakaze isn't. Yet. Anyway, moving on swiftly. With the Howland dead, that's actually very, very good for Commodore Pixel, because the Howland was the one who was spotting him. And now he gets to do to the Montana over there what he did to the Prinz Ruprecht earlier. Although it's going to take a bit longer, because unlike the Prinz Ruprecht, the Montana, while it doesn't have great armour, it's a fairly standard armour scheme for an American battleship, 32mm everywhere, but better than the, I think, 26 or 27mm that the Prinz Ruprecht had. Have a quick look at the scores, by the way, and the kills, because his team have only lost 3 ships, and thanks to the Shimanto, the team have a cap circle. However, it's at this point where things start to go horribly, horribly wrong, as the team lose Frederick the Great, and then just a couple of seconds later, they also lose the Brest, and then, and Probably doesn't come as a surprise to anybody who was looking at the minimap. They also lose the Shimanto, probably trying to get his torpedoes away. Oh, big hits on the Minotaur there. Looks like he did get the torpedoes away and was very unlucky to not kill the Minotaur, who was down to 799 health for a second there. I mean, it was obvious the Shimanto was going to die. He was charging straight into that huge cluster of enemy ships, but at the end of the day, he's a Tier 8 light cruiser in a Tier 10 battle, and he's not a very good Tier 8 light cruiser. He flipped a cap circle. He very nearly sank the Minotaur. I'm not going to judge him too harshly. There goes the Montana. You notice how the Shimakaze's got no health left? He was on full health when he started shooting at that Howland, but he's still lurking around inside radar range of a fucking Worcester. Oh my god. Oh well. The Montana's down, finished off by the Yamato. The Yamato, who, following in the footsteps of the Shimanto earlier, and because the destroyers and submarines continue to do nothing useful, the Yamato is now flipping that cap at Alpha. A cap that hasn't been contested this entire game. And the battleship's flipping it, because of course he is. Wonder how long that Shimakaze's going to... Oh, there he is, detonated. Yeah, wasn't that a surprise? Said absolutely nobody. Meanwhile, enemy team, despite being down 1 kill, and about to be down, thanks to the Yamato, another cap circle, still slightly ahead on points. Commodore Pixel trying to rain down death and destruction on the Minotaur, but it is extreme range, and the Minotaur was doing a pretty good job of ducking and diving. Oh, he's managed to score a few more hits and set a fire. Switches his fire to the Worcester, since the Minotaur is now occluded by the island over there. Also looks like the Minotaur's popped his smoke. And has, yep. Oh, and there's a fire on the Worcester too. Smart move there from the Minotaur. I mean, he wasn't on low health, but he was on fire, and there's a Yamato over there that the Minotaur is now shooting at from the safety of his smoke screen. And the Yamato has 18.1-inch guns, and it will citadel a light cruiser from any angle. Well, that's not strictly true. I mean, it's not going to citadel a Smolensk because, you know, the shells won't have time to arm, they'll just overpenetrate. And it is possible to ricochet an 18.1-inch armor-piercing shell on the Minotaur's belt if sufficiently angled, and if the shot hits the belt, but if it doesn't hit the belt, it's going to citadel you. So, smoke up, farm some damage. Meanwhile, the enemy Shimakaze's gotten a kill, actually another one. That's his second kill on the friendly Iowa. And again, despite the fact that the kills are now even, and Commodore Pixel's team have 2 of the 3 cap circles, the enemy team are still 100 points ahead, as that Balau, up to the north, continues to play an extremely dangerous game with the enemy Worcester. Commodore Pixel taking advantage of the fact that the Minotaur can't spot him while it's in the smoke screen, crossing open water there, dumped some torpedoes into the smoke, but took this long to get into actual torpedo firing range. The Minotaur, probably because the smoke screen was expiring, has left the smoke. And he's done it at the worst possible time for Commodore Pixel, because he's now kind of exposed broadside with an island in the way, limiting his ability to maneuver. So all we can really do is continue to pour the fire onto the Worcester here and attempt to at least angle against the Worcester's 152mm AP, and working the throttle there, forcing the Worcester to overshoot. Commodore Pixel probably should have died here. I mean, he's going to get the Worcester. And the reason I say he probably should have died here is because he's a very, very thinly armoured light cruiser caught in open water in a crossfire between 2 other light cruisers, except he wasn't caught in a crossfire between 2 other light cruisers because the Worcester completely ignored him. The Worcester, constantly getting harried by the Balau over there, although, judging by the Worcester's health, not with any great degree of success, is instead focusing his fire on the Brest. And turning to get broadside to the Brest, which is a very, very brave move. Then again, the Brest is firing high explosive at him too, so... Meanwhile, the Yamato's gone down. That's the enemy Shimakaze's 3rd kill. And this guy is now caught in a crossfire between 2 cruisers. And this is what happens, or what should happen when you're in a light cruiser, getting caught in a crossfire. Commodore Pixel, now he has the broadside, switching to armor piercing. The Balau, closing the suicide range and eating a whole bunch of depth charges. Ordinarily, you'd be hard-pressed to guess who was going to win that engagement, but it's going to be the Worcester because he's firing armour-piercing into the Brest's broadside, and I think the Brest might have still been using high explosive. So the Brest goes down. Somehow the Below survives being death charged without getting any hits on the Worcester, who, well, credit to the Worcester, he put up one hell of a fight. I mean, that was 3-on-1. He killed the Brest, nearly killed the Below. It was kind of asking a bit much for him to kill Commodore Pixel and the Smolensk as well. It's now 2-on-2. The enemy team are still slightly ahead on points, and it's only now that somebody on the enemy team, let's face it, it's going to be the Shimakaze, starts flipping the cap circle at Alpha. Now, to be completely fair to the Below, the friendly submarine, he has amassed a rather large amount of spotting damage. Unfortunately, we can't expect any more of that because he is way out of position, and even given the comically unrealistic speeds that World of Warships has given to submarines, there's no way he's going to be able to reposition in time to be of any use to Commodore Pixel in the Smolensk. So we've got the nightmare situation here of a light cruiser on around half health, although he does still have a heel left. But it's a light cruiser going up against a Musashi, Tier 9 sister ship of the Yamato, armed with the same 18.1-inch guns, and a Shimakaze. And the Shimakaze is going to flip that cap uncontested because it's so far away, there's nothing anybody can do about it. And there's the Musashi on 70,000 health and healing. However, this is not just any old light cruiser. This is the Smolensk. Unless that Musashi has loaded high explosive shells, he's going to find out just how difficult it is for a battleship to kill this light cruiser. Oh, he has loaded the high explosive shells. Shit. Dodge. Dodge. Okay. Yeah, that was unexpected. I mean, if you stop and think about it, it makes sense. Because you're in a battleship and you're facing a light cruiser, and even if you don't understand how easily the Smolensk absorbs armor-piercing shells, you're facing a light cruiser and a submarine. Naturally, you're going to load the high explosive. The problem, of course, is that a lot of people don't stop and think about it. But that Musashi clearly did. Either that, or he's the kind of brain-dead shit a battleship player who just fires high explosive at everything, but doesn't really matter at this point because he does have the high explosive loaded, and that can absolutely cause all kinds of problems for Commodore Pixel. Was, of course, spotted by the Shimakaze. He was obviously in the cap circle at Bravo, not just because, look, here is torpedoes, but somebody was flipping it before the Musashi arrived. Having to thread the needle between those torpedo tracks means that he is still having to give uncomfortable amounts of broadside to the Musashi, who fortunately had not reloaded, and now, as he switches to the armor-piercing to punish the Musashi's broadside, Player 2 enters the battle, dodges another particularly badly aimed torpedo thread, switches straight to the high explosive, gets all of the guns firing, absolutely has to nuke that Shimakaze because it's the easiest one to kill, gets the Kraken unleashed, and then watch what happens to his health bar. Triggers his last heal, which is then wiped out by the parting salvo from the Shimakaze, leaving him on 729 health before the emergency 10% heal kicks in from the special Russian commander, without which he absolutely would have died to the Musashi's secondaries, wouldn't have been able to switch to the armor-piercing to spank the broadside and then finish him off with the torpedoes, securing the win in a fight which, on paper, the odds were stacked against him, but because he's such a massive Gigachad... yeah. So what's that? Confederate? Yup. Dreadnought in a light cruiser. I mean, seriously, come on. Kraken Unleashed, obviously. 6 kills. Witherer. That's 60,000 fire damage. And, of course, high caliber. How do you think you did for base experience on that one? Remember, anything over 1,000 is a decent game. 1,500 is a good game. Anything over 2,000 is a great game. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Commodore Pixel did 3,237 base experience on that battle. You just watched the charge of the Gigachad Light Cruiser Brigade. And I hope you all enjoyed it, because that's it for today. As always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.